Well, welcome to the evening lecture of this year's Menno Simon's lecture series on This Is Our Story, This Is Our Song, the Power of Music in Community. I am Mark Jansen, Professor of History here at Bethel College. The lectures are only possible because the John P. and Carolina Schrag Kaufman family in 1950 established the Menno Simon's Lectureship Endowment to promote research and public lectures relating to Mennonite history, thought, and culture, past and present. In 1997, the William E. and Meta Gehring Yunke family substantially increased the size of the endowment. Jan Kraybill, this year's speaker, went to high school in Colby, Kansas, and earned degrees in music education and piano and organ performance at Kansas State University and the Conservatory of Music and Dance at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. She regularly plays and oversees the care of the three largest organs in the Kansas City area. Her extensive concert schedule has taken her around the world, and on Sunday, will take her to the East Texas Pipe Organ Festival. She has been involved with Grammy-winning and nominated recording projects, and in May released a solo organ album recorded at Grace Cathedral in Topeka entitled Marked for Grace. If you search online for her name, you will find her website where you can purchase her CDs. And in addition to all that, after this morning's convocation in Memorial Hall, we know that she is also a gifted music educator. Please join me in welcoming Jan Kraybill to the podium, this time in Kraybill Auditorium.
Thank you very much for that introduction and for your warm welcome. I have to say, I stand here in Kraybill Auditorium feeling like a giant outsider. Imposter syndrome is strong in my blood right now because I'm not that Kraybill. You can tell by the spelling of the name, right? It's not that Kraybill. So I married into a wonderful family, and as I am told, the family name was originally Kraybill in the old country. And there were a group of Kraybills that came over and settled in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. That's where most of my relatives by marriage are. But one brother kept going west and ended up in Abilene, Kansas. And it is that line of Kraybills/Kraybills that I am related to by marriage. And I'm told that I am also related to the Kraybills spelled all the different ways, including the Graybills with a G. And so it's all one big happy family as far as I'm concerned. I did have a relative by marriage who has already spoken on this series. Donald B. Kraybill spoke here in the 90s about the riddle of Amish culture. So I'm in good company, but I still feel kind of like an outsider. I'm a musician. I am not a historian. I am not a scientist. But I think that especially now, in COVID, and with a new hymnal that has just come out, that I think it's important that we discuss why we sing. And when we can sing again, it's important that we celebrate it. So this new hymnal, Voices Together, turns out to be ironically named in COVID. Who would have ever thunk that it is dangerous? It's actually life-threatening to sing together. It's really too bad. But it does give us the chance to contemplate, perhaps, why we sing. And the reason I think it's important is that music is connected with memory, music is connected with meaning, and music is connected with mission. So we're going to look at those three topics this evening. If I sing to you, normally I would like for you to sing back to me. You're not going to sing, but just in your mind, complete this. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Right? You sang H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. There is a reason that we teach kids the ABCs with a melody. We don't just say it goes like this and then name the 26 letters of the alphabet and ask them to repeat them back to us. We do that through music because music makes it more memorable. Music makes it easier to recall. That's what music does in our brains. Here's another one. I am stuck on Band-Aids, 'cause Band-Aids stuck on me. How many recognized that one? How long has it been since you heard that commercial? It really does stick, doesn't it? Right? Here's another one. Give me a break, break me on a piece of that Kit Kat bar, right? All right, some of you are going, no. That's a more recent one. So our watching of commercials has changed as our ability to bleep past them has changed. So maybe commercials aren't as powerful anymore because they're not as repeated anymore. That tells us something about what we need to do to make hymns memorable in church. So we'll get more of that later. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is, right? That's another older one. Take me out to the ball game. You might have sung that one not so recently ago, or maybe a long, long time ago, but it's in those brain cells somewhere. Jesus loves me, this I know. You do know that one, right? Yeah, we were taught that when we were kids. How long has it been since you've sung that in church? My church doesn't sing it very often unless we're singing with kids, but it sticks. It sticks. Amazing grace. All right, so that's one that I am requested to play at funerals all the time. That is one that is really sticky in our minds. So music and memory are inextricably linked. And through music, we can help ourselves remember the church's teachings, Christ's stories, God's stories, each one's worth and our intent. So let's start with the church's teachings. From the beginning of life, Jesus loves me, this I know, to the end of our life, another one that's requested is How Great Thou Art. Those hymns express a human lifespan on this earth in music. Those things are important to us. It helps us to remember the church's teachings about what it is to be a disciple on this earth. Christ stories, from the first Noel to Were You There When They Crucified My Lord? Christ's human embodiment of life on this earth. And then God's stories. There is a whole section of this book that is titled Telling God's Stories. It's hymns number 175 to 418. It's a lot of hymns that we sing about God's story. And then each one's worth in the sight of God, in the sight of each other. Everyone has worth. There's a section called Our Stories in this book. Again, a very substantial section, hundreds of hymns. Here's one. It's number 36 in the book. Let us build a house where love can dwell and all can safely live, a place where saints and children tell how hearts learn to forgive, built of hopes and dreams and visions, rock of faith and vault of grace. Here the love of Christ shall end divisions. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. An aspirational goal for any church of any size. All are welcome. There are 5 stanzas that we can sing about how all are welcome. So we tell God's stories in our songs. And then we can also reinforce our intent as disciples. Here's one by the text editor of this hymnal, Adam Tice. And he asks in this hymn, what is the world like when God's will is done? Mustard seeds grow more than we can conceive. Roots thread the soil. Branches reach for the sun. This is how God moves us each to believe. What is the world like when God's will is done? Witness the wandering child coming home. Watch as the parent breaks into a run. This is how God longs for us when we roam. What is the world like when God's will is done? No more is neighbor just ally or friend. Peace thrives in places where once there was none. This is how God works when rivalries end. What is the world like when God's will is done? Ready for feasting, we watch through the night, tending our lamps till the new day's begun. This is how God readies us for the light. These are the stories that Jesus imparts, filled with the Spirit who joins us as one, born through our voices, our hands, and our hearts. This is a new world where God's will is done. So when we sing that, we make it memorable, and maybe it moves us to action. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me, melt me, mold me, fill me, use me. A song that we have sung to God for ages. Do we really live it? Maybe if we sing it enough, we will. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. If we sing it enough, maybe we will. There's another hymn called You're Not Alone. This one was new to me. This is number 779 in the book. It was written by Brian Moyer Suderman and has an accompaniment by Charlene Nafziger, sorry. And it says, you're not alone. We are one body. You're not alone. We stand with you. You're not alone. Your time of suffering is our suffering too. And I know the day is coming when we will be rejoicing anew. The kind of hymns that we can sing to each other remind us and remind each other what our intent is. They're aspirational. They lead us outside our baser selves. They lead us to something that's bigger and better. So I invite you right now just to be silent for a little bit and listen to your breath. And can you hear the cricket back there? Listen to the cricket, think about the cricket's breath, and think about your own heartbeat. Just listen. The poet and pastor and theologian and educator and musician Thomas Troger says this about you, quote, "You are a woodwind and a drum. You are a musical ensemble. Before you speak your first word as an infant, you are a woodwind instrument that plays 12 million breaths a year. And you are a drum that beats 40 million times a year. From the moment of your birth, you are a musical ensemble, playing a perpetual concert through every moment of your life." So here's one of my pet peeves. I will show up to do a workshop for church musicians, and someone in the workshop will say, "Our congregation is so small and we don't have any musicians." And what they mean is they don't have any keyboard musicians. They have musicians. I don't need to say that to Mennonites, do I? There are tons of Mennonite congregations that worship wonderfully a cappella. I've attended those congregations, we are all musicians. We have various levels and various areas of expertise. My singing voice is nowhere as good as my voice on the pipe organ. We have levels and areas of expertise, but we are all musicians. Thomas Troger says that we are all musical ensembles just because we were created, just because we breathe and our hearts beat. So our songs carry our stories. So when we sing, we repeat and reclaim and we proclaim the truths that we know. And we reinforce and we share our beliefs. And we hopefully internalize them and live them. Our songs and our stories become us. And we have to acknowledge our questions as well. So one of my favorite hymns, I quoted it this morning as well, is "For the Fruit of All Creation." And this is its last stanza. For the harvest of the Spirit, thanks be to God. For the good we all inherit, thanks be to God. For the wonders that astound us, for the truths that still confound us, most of all, that love has found us. Thanks be to God. I hope that you sing that a lot when we're allowed to sing again. And I hope that each time you sing, you remember that each hymn or song is someone's testimony. So the testimony of a creator that takes their baby, their creation, their hymn or song, and puts it out there for the rest of us to sing. But also, it carries the testimonies of people who have sung that hymn or song at important points in their life. So I encourage you, while we can't sing, think about your connections, your intersections with hymns or songs over your lifetime, and share those with somebody. Tell somebody why your hymn is your favorite hymn. Tell somebody what you would like to be sung at your memorial service. Tell somebody before it's too late. My father died of a sudden heart attack at lunchtime, just gone. Planning his funeral was one of the hardest things I've ever had to participate in doing because we didn't know. We didn't know. He was a musician all his life. He sang in church choirs, sang solos, played the double bass. I know he loved music, but we didn't know what he wanted when we memorialized his life. Don't let that be for yours. So science is catching up to what musicians, all of us in church, have always known. But I think it's really interesting to see what science now knows. So there was an article, Why Music Makes Our Brains Sing. This was published in the New York Times in 2013. It opens with this sentence: music is not tangible. You can't eat it, drink it, or mate with it. It doesn't protect against the rain, wind, or cold. It doesn't vanquish predators or mend broken bones. And yet, humans have always prized it. And this article goes on to investigate why. Scientists have looked at this question: why is music so essential? Why is it essential? And these particular scientists used brain imaging at the point when people were listening to music at those peak moments. They called them peak emotional moments, those chill moments when something really moves you. What happens inside your brain? And they found that it's the release of the neurotransmitter called dopamine. This is an essential signaling molecule in your brain in sections that are known to respond to positive kinds of stimuli. But what was most interesting about the research is when the dopamine is released. It's not only released at that peak moment. If it's a familiar piece that you're listening to, it's in anticipation of that peak moment. And so you get this enjoyment of music because you know what's coming next. That's the value of listening to something that's very familiar. And so they said this is the quote that's up there: each act of listening to music may be thought of as both recapitulating the past and predicting the future. When we listen to music, these brain networks actively create expectations based on our stored knowledge. And when we go from listening to actually singing, another article, Singing Rewires Damaged Brains. This was in the BBC News in 2010. This summarized research that was led by Gottfried Schlag, who is a professor of neurology at Harvard Medical School in Boston. This was the first study to combine the singing therapy that we know works with stroke victims, to combine that with brain imaging to see what's really going on. And it turns out that singing and speaking are processed in different parts of the brain, but pitch is processed in more parts of the brain. And so that connection is what helps stroke patients to recover their speech. So there is therapy that helps stroke patients actually sing the words that they want to say, and those words come easier. You might have seen this, as I have, in relatives who have suffered from Alzheimer's. Often, if you start singing a familiar hymn, they can recall every word. When they can't even recall what your name is, when they can't even recall what their name is, but they can remember those hymns. Again, music and memory. So the quote from this article that I loved is, people sometimes ask where in the brain music is processed. And the answer is everywhere above the neck. So it very much matters what we sing. And this is the responsibility that I bear the weight of almost every single day. So what should we as church musicians decide to put in the brains of those people that we're singing with? How should we choose the hymns and songs that we share in worship? For me, it's a really important question. And so I was really interested in this article that appeared on the website of this book, talking about the language in Voices Together. I served on a hymnal editing team once, and this was one of the hardest questions that we had to address. So our language for God, for instance, has been fairly restrictive. So we have talked historically about God as Father, about God as always male, about God as King, and we've ignored aspects of God in our language for God. And so we know that. And so our hymnal team began with this lofty goal that our language is always going to be more inclusive. But then you get to familiar hymns. This is my Father's world. Should we change Father? And so we really struggled with that. And it turns out that every hymnal team struggles with that, and this one did too. And they arrived at the same conclusions that the team that I served on arrived at. And that was, we tried to be expansive in the book as a whole. But on the same page, you might find differing images for God. And if a hymn was very, very familiar, we chose to leave it alone, but to balance it on another page with a hymn that provided a contrasting image for God. And then we have images for each other. It turns out that that language is metaphorical. So when I describe a book or a computer or a chair, none of those words are the things that they describe, they're descriptors. And our languages, no matter what language you speak, our languages are always imperfect. They don't fully describe the thing. Some languages have a gender assigned to everything, and that makes it restrictive. And then you talk about God, and can you remove that gender from that descriptor word? It's not easy. And so we have to struggle with those things. I'm glad that this team was so thoughtful about their struggle. And if you want to read that full article, I highly recommend it because it shows the careful thought that went into every decision that they make. So here is a hymn, God of the Bible, because it turns out that even the Bible has lots of images for God. So this is a hymn written by a New Zealand author, Shirley Arana Murray, and it goes like this. God of the Bible, God in the gospel, hope seen in Jesus, hope yet to come. You are our center, daylight or darkness, freedom or prison. You are our home. Fresh as the morning, sure as the sunrise, God always faithful, you do not change. So our words can swirl around this mystery that we know as God, and it's okay that no single word can fully describe the awesome mystery of the divine being. There's another word for God. In just that one stanza, hope, center, daylight, freedom, fresh as the morning, near as the sunrise, all of those are descriptors of this unknowable majesty and mystery, and I find that wonderful. So we sing because God gave us voice, but not only voice, God gave us emotions and thoughts and brains and hearts. And it turns out that all creation is designed to sing. So when we sing, we join the music of the spheres. Our every atom is vibrating. Every part of us is singing. And singing is good for us. Singing is good for us physically and mentally and emotionally. And because we're creative beings, we can create new songs, new stories, new ways of relating to each other and to God. And so that leads to my second point, music and meaning. So God's people have always sung. We have the first hymnal, the book of Psalms. It's available to us right there in our Bibles. And the first hymnal included instructions for musicians that we might have forgotten about. So for instance, Psalm 22, at the beginning of it, before the text of the psalm, it says, "For the director of music, to the tune of Doe in the Morning, a psalm of David." If only we knew what that tune was, that would be great. But we do have the words. And like the songs that you hear in popular music, the book of Psalms has a wide range of emotion. We tend to ignore all but the celebratory ones, but there are songs that say, "Why, God? How could you be ignoring me? How could I be in pain for so long?" There are songs like that in the book of Psalms too. And in this book, there are more songs than ever to talk about those points in the Christian journey that aren't easy. And I admire this book for that. Christ sang at perhaps the most painful moment of his life on earth. It says in Mark 14:26, it says, "And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives." So music can be part of meaningful moments in our lives. And even without words, music can mean something. I love the story of this hymn tune because this is one of those rare moments when the tune preceded the words. So Jan Sibelius was a Finnish composer, and he wrote a tone poem, a story for orchestra, a wordless story, and he called it Finlandia. And this became very, very popular in his home country without text. If you don't know this tune, it's the one that goes like this. And without text, it became so popular and so meaningful to the people of Finland that when they fell under Russian rule, it was outlawed. It was illegal to listen to perform that wordless tune. That's the meaning of music in action. Now later on, there was text that was put with that tune, and for a while Jan Sibelius said, "No, I didn't mean it that way," but he did allow it later on. And so now we have in this book text to sing to that tune, and again, it's aspirational. So it is number 710 in the book. "This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating, with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. So hear my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine. This is my prayer, O God of all earth's kingdoms. Your kingdom come, on earth your will be done. O God, be lifted up till all shall serve you, and hearts united learn to live as one. So hear my prayer, O God of all the nations. Myself I give you. Let your will be done. If you know that text really well, there was a word shift in there that's very significant. But I'm going to let you discover that on your own. Or maybe ask me a question about it and I'll let you know. So we sing to build community. We sing following Christ's example. On the worst night of his life, he was building the community, strengthening their faith, strengthening his faith on that horrible night. We sing to share peace with each other. Do you know the story of Silent Night on the battlefields of World War I? So they figured out how to share a song together, a song that they both knew, both sides knew in their own language. The music carried across the no man's land between the trenches. And all of a sudden, not only were they singing together on Christmas Eve, they were meeting in the middle of no man's land and giving each other small gifts like a cigarette or a button off of a uniform. And then somebody fashioned a soccer ball out of something, and they were playing soccer on Christmas Eve with the enemy, all because of a song. The power of music. Now, if only we could figure out how to make that last more than just one night, but it did happen one night. I find great hope in that. We sing to participate. Music is not a spectator activity. And sometimes in congregations, the only way we can all participate together is to sing. I can't wait till we can get back to that in every congregation, without masks, singing robustly, fully, with joy. And if you're not a singer, this section is for you, because that first hymnal, the book of Psalms, says multiple times that musical mastery is not the point. The point is make a joyful noise. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It just has to be joyful. Psalm 66, make a joyful noise unto God, all ye lands. Psalm 81, sing aloud to God our strength. Make a joyful noise unto the God of Jacob. Psalm 95, twice. First it says, oh, come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. And then 2 verses later it says, come before God's presence with thanksgiving and make a joyful noise unto God with psalms. And then just 3 Psalms later, Psalm 98, make a joyful noise unto the Lord. And Psalm 100, make a joyful noise. We get the point. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It just has to be joyful. Benjamin Zander is a well-known orchestral conductor. And he says, in a famous TED talk that he gave, he says to us that no one is tone deaf. You're not tone deaf if you can figure out how to shift, when to shift your stick drive car or your motorcycle or your tractor. If you can figure out by the sound when it's time to shift, you're not tone deaf. You're not tone deaf if you pick up the phone and you can tell instantly that it's your mother, and not only can you tell it's your mother, you can tell what kind of day she's had. You're not tone deaf. You're making judgments based on musical tones. Maybe you're not so good at reproducing those tones, but you're not tone deaf. We are all musicians. So let's see what science has to tell us about singing in community. The Sounds That Bind, Why We Evolved to Love Music. This was published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology in 2013. There is evidence that music developed as a way to cement social bonds within community, and not only church communities. Military marches, songs at football and soccer games, Take Me Out to the Ball Game at a baseball game, national anthems, these all bind us together as a temporary community. The singing of it matters. These scientists say, quote, music developed as a form of social communication, a tool to pass information about the group's shared mental state to a number of individuals at once. These researchers looked at 7 different studies of music in community. And they concluded that music doesn't simply entertain or even simply uplift us. It actually binds us together. So that hymn, "Blessed be the tie that binds," music is part of that tie. And they say, quote, the powerful psychological pull of music in modern life may derive from its innate ability to connect us to others. And again, singing changes your brain. Group singing has been scientifically shown to lower stress and relieve anxiety and elevate endorphins. This was published in Time magazine in 2013. When you sing, musical vibrations move through you, altering your physical and emotional landscape. Group singing is the most exhilarating and transformative of all. It takes something incredibly intimate, a sound that begins inside you, shares it with a room full of people, and it comes back as something even more thrilling, harmony. Even reading that, I get chills, and I can't wait till we can sing together robustly. Here's a book that was just published last year, Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art. And this author, James Nestor, looked at science and breath. A lot of us take breathing for granted, except in a pandemic. It's an interesting thing that we're all focusing more now on breath. And this author found that scientists have discovered that our capacity to breathe has changed through human evolution and actually got a lot worse right after the Industrial Revolution and up to our own time. Even our jaws have changed in reaction to how we breathe. Our lungs have definitely changed. Our diaphragms have changed in reaction to how we're using them. But on a more positive note, it's not irreversible. So these same researchers are learning that many of our modern day ailments, things like asthma and anxiety and ADHD and psoriasis and more, all of those things could either be reduced or gotten rid of altogether simply by changing how we breathe. And so this author looked at experiments with freedivers and with Tibetan monks, and with lots of other people, including a guy named Carl Stowe, who was the choir director at Westminster Choir College in New Jersey for a long time. And he was so successful there that he ended up being at the Metropolitan Opera in New York, retraining singers how to sing more efficiently, more joyfully. And he was so renowned there that in 1958, the administration of the East Orange Veterans Affairs Hospital in New Jersey called him and said, "You seem to know something. Do you want to take on some new students?" And he said, describe the students. And not only could they not sing, a lot of them couldn't walk because they were suffering from emphysema. And he said, sure, I'll take on that challenge. And he did, and produced wondrous results by retraining people how to use their lungs more efficiently. And he was so good at that, he ended up training the athletes for the 1968 Olympics. Amazing. Just retraining these athletes, singers, emphysema patients in how to breathe. And then if we look at emotional health, when we're in the middle of grief, it turns out that singing is good then too. So, researchers in 2018 in a study published in the BMJ Journal of Supportive and Palliative Care, said this: weekly singing in a choir was found to support stability in mental health and well-being, as well as increasing self-efficacy and self-esteem in people who had been bereaved by cancer. The particular environment and engagement provided by choirs suggests that they could be a promising mutual support intervention for people experiencing grief. Music and meaning goes far beyond what we can imagine. We can learn to share community. We can learn to comfort each other. We can learn to share each other's stories and songs. And we can make a new community where all are celebrated and loved. And isn't that the mission of the church? So when we sing, we can share each other's stories. We can redefine our narrow concept of community. You know, no matter how wide our concept is, it's still too narrow for God's community. Here's a hymn, again by Shirley Arena Murray. God, give me time. God, give me time to learn the words I find so hard to say. The loving words, forgiving words that take the sting away. God, give me calm to ride the storm when waves of anger rise. A moment when I grasp a truth my lesser self denies. God, give me time to deal with words that threaten and destroy, the easy words of politics that kill creation's joy, the speeches that proliferate economies of greed, the thieves of children's heritage, the poison in the seed. God, give me time to meet your word, transforming as I go my little world, my larger world, by all I do and know. Encountering in others' faith the wisdom and the grace that Jesus Christ was born to bring and gave a human face. Doesn't that make you want to sing it? Makes me want to sing it. Darn COVID. So we share each other's joys and sorrows. We find that we are more alike than different. We grow, and our concept of God grows. There are 40 different languages in this book. One of those is Latin. The community at Taizé in France sings a lot in Latin because that language is common to all of our languages, or most of our languages on this earth, but none of us speaks Latin, so it doesn't belong to anyone. And so you can sing things like Laudate Dominum in a Taizé song in this book and celebrate without ownership. Anybody could sing that repetitive text. And you can sing in other languages. I know very few words in the Shona language of Zimbabwe, but I know these. Uya imose tinamate mwari means come all ye people, come and praise your maker. Why do I know that and why do I remember it? Because it's glued to a melody, and that's in this book as well. And when we breathe together, when we sing together, we become more as one. Again, from the book Breath. Everything you or I or any other breathing thing has ever put in its mouth or in its nose or soaked in through its skin is hand-me-down space dust that's been around for 13.8 billion years. This wayward matter has been split apart by sunlight, spread throughout the universe, and come back together again. To breathe is to absorb ourselves in what surrounds us, to take in little bits of life, understand them, and give pieces of ourselves back out. Respiration is, at its core, reciprocation or recreation. I love these two words because I love looking into the roots of words. So the Latin word spirare means spirit. It also means breath. So when we inspire, we take in spirit, we take in breath. When we conspire, con is a prefix that means with or together. When we conspire, we breathe together. Isn't that a better definition than our normal definition of that word? So we could conspire to breathe together with God. So why do we sing? We sing to join God's song. Did you know that God sings, will sing? According to Zephaniah 3:17, the Lord your God is with you. God is mighty to save. God will take great delight in you. God will quiet you with love. God will rejoice over you with singing. So we sing to join God's song. We sing to internalize the mission. We sing aspirationally. We sing to be invigorated so we have new energy to work toward God's goals. We sing to inspire our lives of faith and service. And we sing to be motivated, to be moved, to be educated, to be spiritually formed together. So what can we do in this time of COVID? Well, I have some ideas. In this time of COVID, sing. Sing by yourself, but sing every day. There's a TED Talk by a guy named Will Hewitt who decided to embrace the discipline of singing every day. And he said, I'm going to sing 15 minutes a day. 15 minutes a day I'm going to sing. And he found, as he kept going with this, that soon it became an hour a day because he liked it so much. So he says that humming is a gateway drug. So if you're not used to singing, just try humming. Just try humming for a while until you're forced to break into song. Will Hewitt says, quote, it was like a fire that the rest of the day gathered around. He sang on planes. He sang in cars. He sang in the shower. He sang every single day. Even on days that he didn't feel like it, he sang. And he said, my resistance would just turn into music. And when he was in nature, he especially liked singing. And he says this, quote, sometimes it seemed the world was so full of singing that there was nothing I could add. And then other times it seemed as if I was already singing. I just needed to open my mouth. Sing every single day. Also during COVID, use this book as a resource. It doesn't have to be just a singing resource. So this could be a spiritual discipline to read a hymn every single day, to look at the resources, the worship resources that are within this book. There is not just music in this book. To look at the indexes. So if you're thinking of a topic, or if you're having a rough day and you think, what does the hymnal have to say about social justice? What does the hymnal have to say about breathing? What does the hymnal have to say about any topic you can think of? Open the book and see, look in the indexes and see if that's addressed. And then during COVID, it's okay to sing with your bubble. And often your bubble might include some kids. And it's really, really, really important that we sing with kids so that when they get to the end of their life, they'll have something to look back on and to comfort them. And if they're suffering from Alzheimer's, something that reconnects them just for a brief moment with the world around them. So sing with your bubble. And then after we finally get past this virus, I don't think it'll ever be over, but I think we will get past this point in our history, then immediately expand your community, expand your bubble. One way to do that is to tell stories of hymns that you love. So where are your intersections? Another way to do that is to educate yourself about stories of hymns that may be very familiar to you, but that you've never learned the story behind. So here's one of my favorites. There was a guy in Ireland in the 1800s. His name was Joseph Scriven. And he was engaged to be married. But unfortunately, before they could be married, in a boating accident, his fiancée drowned. And he couldn't bear to be in Ireland anymore because everywhere he went, it reminded him of her and of the loss. And so he left his native land and he went to Canada. He ended up being a tutor, an English tutor for a French-Canadian family. And he fell in love again, and he was engaged to be married. and this time it was the flu. Before they could be married, his fiancée died of the flu. And then he got a letter. This is in the 1800s when you got news by letter. A letter from his mother that said, "I'm not doing well." It takes a long time for a letter to get from Ireland to Canada. And so he really had no idea if even she was still alive or how she was. And he couldn't get back there, so he couldn't give the ministry of presence to his mother. He couldn't go and hold her hand or hug her. Does this sound familiar in a time of COVID? So what did he do? He wrote a poem for his mother to comfort his mother. What a friend we have in Jesus. All our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear, all because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Every song is somebody's testimony. So when we can sing together, let's sing it like that. Sing it like the treasure that it is. Sing wherever you congregate. This is not only in congregations. There's a part of the Hymn Society. I used to be the executive director of the Hymn Society in the United States and Canada. There's a part of that group that's called the Center for Congregational Song. And I would always get the question, what is congregational song? And I would say, the songs you sing in church, yes, but also the songs you sing on the street when you're protesting. The songs that you sing, the songs that our Congress sang on the steps of the Capitol after 9/11, when they gathered and sang, "Let there be peace on earth." The songs that you sing when you congregate, that's congregational song. So sing wherever you congregate. Sing at backyard barbecues. Sing at children's birthday parties. Sing at Sunday school. Sing in church. Sing. And do it with gusto when we finally can. And then sing as a spiritual practice. Remember that spirare, the word for spirit in Latin, also means to breathe. Singing moves our breath and our spirit into the world. The act of singing strengthens our community, and our community's investment in that group song strengthens the power and the beauty of the song. So it's a reciprocal relationship. Musical mastery is not the point. Make a joyful noise. And when you do, you create new vibrations in our world, positive energy that we need. So in conclusion, I just want to leave you with two things. One is a quote, and one is a song. The quote is from a book called A Song to Sing, A Life to Live by a father and daughter team, Don and Emily Salyers. And this is the quote. Coming alive to music, we are led on a double journey into the mystery of God and into the depths of our humanity. If we listen well, we may even hear the voices of ancestors and of cultures and communities we've never even met. And a song, number 175 in this book. Also, this was new to me, and I love this text. The text and tune are by two females, author and composer. Heather Jocelyn Cranston is the author. Sally Ann Morris, a friend of mine from Hymn Society, is the composer. This is how the text goes. Planets humming as they wander, stars aflame with silent song, galaxies that spin on, endless, melodies afar but strong. God's creation tunes its carol far beyond our mortal gaze. Heavenly bodies help us listen to the boundless song of praise. Atoms quivering deep inside us, cells ablaze with energy. Particles are chanting psalms in tiny holy synergy. All these molecules provide us patterns for the craft of God, offering up melodic first fruit, grateful hymns which leave us awed. Human voices praise our Maker, part of the created choir. Rumbling tones of space below us. Neutrons descant ever higher. Hymns arise from all around us. Thankful praise our whole life long. To the one who made us, knows us, author of the endless song. May we sing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. We have time for some questions. We have roving mics, so if someone has a question, please raise your hand and we'll bring you a mic.
I'm just curious, you said you're from Colby. Did you know Sam Raimi?
So Sam Raimi is one of Colby's greatest characters. He's a little older than I am, and so I didn't know him, but my mother and his mother used to play bridge together. So Sam is a Metropolitan Opera star and one of Colby's favorite sons. So I'm glad to know that I'm from the same town as Sam Raimi, and I'm glad that you mentioned him. Anybody got a favorite hymn you'd like to tell me about?
I love the hymn Between Darkness and Light. It also has verses in Palestinian and Arabic.
Yeah, it could be. I am going to look it up so that I don't say it wrong. But yes, it's one of the lovely hymns in the 40 different languages that are in this book.
I think it's short enough that you could read the words.
Yeah, Hebrew, Arabic, and English are the three languages. The English is, between darkness and light, I will always walk, and wherever I will go, I will open a window of light and will plant the seeds of love. And then it repeats, I will open a window of light and plant the seeds of love. And I missed, no, I didn't miss two languages, but the Hebrew and Arabic are printed at the bottom of the page. There are other hymns that have Tamil, the language. These languages I just find beautiful on the page, even though I can't read them. But I just think they're gorgeous to look at. And of course, when you sing them, the alliteration is here. Is that the word I want? It would tell us how to pronounce things. I can't remember what the term is for that. Anyway, that's what's printed with the music. Down below is the actual language. Thank you for mentioning that.
Well, could you lead us in what a friend we have in Jesus? Are we enough that we could sing that?
Yeah, I don't know if we're allowed to sing together. That's the thing.
With our masks on?
Yeah, I purposefully didn't. There were all sorts of things I wanted to sing with you and teach you to sing, but I wasn't sure if that was wise or not, and I certainly would not be part of a super spreader event if I could help it. So I don't know. I'm looking for advice from those of you that are here. It's probably not, or yes. I don't know what to do at this point. Um,
We're singing in our churches with masks.
Okay. All right, is there anyone here that would feel completely uncomfortable if we sang? All right, then let's do it. All right, so what a friend we have in Jesus. And do you know more than the first stanza? Do you need me to feed you words? Maybe? Probably. Okay, all right, so I want to be sure and feed you the words that are in the new book. So that would be under W, number 628 in our book. All right, and hopefully I won't pitch it too high or too low. We'll start about here. What a friend we have in Jesus. All our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Have we trials and temptations? Have we trials and temptations? Is there trouble anywhere? Is there trouble anywhere? We should never be discouraged. We should never be discouraged. Take it to the Lord. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Can we find a friend? Can we find a friend so faithful who will all our sorrows, bear? Jesus knows our every weakness. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Are we weak and heavy laden? Are we weak and heavy laden? Cumbered with a heavy load. Cumbered with a load of care. Precious Savior. Precious Savior, still our refuge. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Do thy friends despise? Do thy friends despise, forsake thee? Take it to the Lord in prayer. Jesus' arms will take and shield thee. Jesus' arms will take and shield. Thou wilt find a solace. Thou wilt find a solace there. Amen. Thank you for singing. Thank you for suggesting it. Would you like to hear another hymn story? Yeah. Do you know the hymn, It Is Well With My Soul? Yeah. Do you know the story behind that hymn? No. Some of you do. See if I get it right. I've forgotten the author's name, though, so I have to look it up. Anybody remember? It's Horatio Spafford. Horatio Spafford. Horatio Spafford was a lawyer and business owner in Chicago. And he had a very successful business and a very successful family. They were pretty well off. And the Chicago fire happened and destroyed many of his properties. And they did recover. None of them were affected personally. They weren't injured by the fire, but the family had a tough time of it financially. And they did recover, and they decided to take a trip, and they got on an ocean liner, and they were going to Europe with a set of friends. And at the last minute, Mr. Spofford was called for a business concern. And so he said to his wife and children, "Go ahead, and I will catch up with you. So you go ahead with the group." And unfortunately, the ship that they were on, I don't remember what happened, but it sank. I don't remember why, but it sank. And Horatio Spofford got, I think, the saddest telegram that anybody could get. And all it said was 2 words: saved alone. It was from his wife. And all of his children had perished. And so later on, he did need to meet her over in Europe. So he is himself on a ship. And when they passed over the area where the earlier ship had sunk, the captain said to him, "This is where it was," so that he could memorialize those children who were somewhere in those depths. And then he wrote a poem. "When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well. It is well with my soul." I hope I have faith like that. If I'm ever tested like that, I hope I have faith like that. There's another hymn that we're going to sing coming up this season in Thanksgiving, "Now Thank We All Our God." That was written by a pastor named Martin Rinkhart. It was written during the 30 Years' War. Why was the 30 Years' War called the 30 Years' War? Because it lasted for 30 years in the 1600s. It got so bad that people were fighting each other and fighting with dogs in the streets for food. And the armies kept fighting and kept surrounding cities and kept cutting them off from supply chains. And Martin Rinkhart, as a pastor, was doing multiple funerals a day. And then the plague hit. And so then there were hundreds of funerals, including his wife and most of his children. And it's said that he actually went out on the battlefields and pleaded with the opposing armies and just said, "Please stop, just stop. This is ridiculous, just stop. We can't do this anymore, just stop." And in the middle of all that, he wrote, "Now thank we all our God, with hearts and hands and voices, who wondrous things have done, in whom this world rejoices." Wow, such faith. At that point, I would be singing one of the Psalms, "How long, O Lord? Why hast thou forsaken me?" And yet, Martin Rinkhart wrote, "Now thank we all our God." I find, if it's not obvious, I find the poetry that is the hymn, I find the poetry to be extremely moving and beautiful. And sometimes, I say this as a musician, sometimes it's necessary for us to divorce the music and the poetry, because the music can be so fun. And you know, the science that says the harmonies are good for us, that's all true. But sometimes we forget to treasure the words that are part of that beautiful poetry. So I love memorizing hymn poetry and just saying it to myself, as beautiful it is. And then, when we sing it, it's even more beautiful. Sorry, I'm taking up your time. Questions? Questions? The question is, does anyone know of any churches that are doing Messiah in the near future? So I don't know of any churches, but Kansas City Symphony is doing Messiah, 3 performances in December, early December. Any churches doing Messiah that anybody knows of? Yes?
There's going to be a performance of at least parts of the Messiah here on campus in December.
Good. So if you didn't hear that, there's going to be a performance of Messiah somewhere here on campus in December. That's great. Wonderful. Yeah, that's one of those gifts. You know, you think about how long ago that piece was written, but how relevant it still is. That's one of those works that I never tire of. I have performed that thing hundreds of times. I'm not in the singing part of it, I'm in the playing part of it, usually at the harpsichord. But there's always something new in that beautiful work. So yes, I'm glad. Do you know where that's going to occur?
Probably either in the church or Menno.
It will occur on the first Wednesday in December at 11 o'clock in Memorial Hall. And you're all welcome to attend and be a part of we pull singers from all over just to come and sing the Messiah.
Wonderful,
Just the Christmas segment of the Messiah.
wonderful.
And I also hear that First Mennonite Church is considering also singing the Messiah. They do it every 3 years. Yeah. It's next year? Okay.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that.
Well, if there aren't any more questions, let's give Jan one more round of applause. And then I want to extend 2 invitations to you. The first is to just move right next door to the Rewires Art Gallery to view the artwork that is in this new hymnal that's on display there. And there's also a little reception so we can continue thinking about the hymnal in a different mode, maybe of art in addition to the music. The second invitation is a little longer term. I want to invite you now already to come back next year to the Menno Simons Lecture, where the speaker will be Brad Gregory, a professor of history at the University of Notre Dame and the author of a book, among others, Salvation at Stake, History of Martyrdom in Early Modern Europe. So we're looking forward to that lecture next year. But for now, let's go next door to the Rewires Gallery.